Hello, New Mexico, and welcome to another episode of Around the Roundhouse, a podcast featuring the policies, politics, and personalities of the land of enchantment from the Roundhouse and beyond. My name is Daniel Chacón, and I'm the state government reporter for the Santa Fe New Mexican. Our guest this week is Sara Attleson, the newly elected chair of the Democratic Party of New Mexico. Ms. Attleson is a former longtime public school librarian, as well as a union advocate and activist. Ms. Attleson, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invite. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Well, as I obviously gave a little bit of an introduction, but please tell us a little bit more about yourself and the skill set that you bring to the job.
Sure. Well, I come from a military family. My father was an Air Force officer, and I think that really helped create part of who I am. You know, I'm resilient as heck. I believe diversity is a strength and is something to be respected. Living in all various cultures, I learned that we should not fear diversity, but embrace it. I am also I can adapt to just about anything. And really, the selfless service was instilled in me, service to our communities. And I think after 47 years as a public school librarian, I proved that I do believe in service. I certainly didn't do it for the large paycheck. I did it to provide a service to the state of New Mexico and our families. So that background, military background, really helped create who I am. I came to New Mexico. I graduated from high school in Germany because my father was in the Air Force. And so that made it possible to go to any state, any of the 50 states. And I chose New Mexico. And it's the best choice I have ever made. I have never regretted that choice 50 some years later. And I came to New Mexico. I went to New Mexico State University. And that's actually where I started becoming an activist in the Democratic Party. I began knocking on doors as a student at New Mexico State to get Dems elected. And I actually registered to vote in Las Cruces the moment I was eligible. And I registered as a proud Democrat and did what I could. And I learned to be an activist and the value of volunteering. So that's where I started in New Mexico.
Most 18-year-olds are thinking about, all sorts of different things and maybe not registering to vote. What was it that prompted that passion, and what about the Democratic Party is it that called to you?
Sure, a great question. I really haven't ever thought about it. My father was a Farm and Labor Democratic Party member of Minnesota, and he was a strong Democrat, very strong. I kid people, I say, FDR was a patron saint in our household. And so we talked about politics around the dinner table. And my mother is half French. And, her French family, they always talk about politics. Where we learn in this country, politics is off limits for conversation. In my family, it was what we talked about. It was typical dinner conversation. And so I think I learned the importance of voting. My parents always voted. And I learned that that everything's political. Everything, our clean air, or the air we breathe, the food we eat. I learned that as a public school educator, that everything we do is political, from our raises to class size, everything is political. And I truly believe that. Social Security, healthcare, it's all political. So that was instilled, I think, from a very early age. And I became more and more passionate about politics.
You mentioned coming to New Mexico some 50 years ago. What had you been to New Mexico before, and what was it about New Mexico that called to you?
I had as a child. We would come home in the summer. My mother's family was in Colorado, and we made a trip to New Mexico. And just the sheer physical beauty, it was so different from anything I'd ever seen. The sheer beauty and just the diversity of the cultures, and hearing of foreign languages in the United States. Just as a child, that was very appealing to me. And it definitely was the land of enchantment. So I remembered that visit, that summer visit, and that's why I decided to come here.
All right. Well, I want to get into your role as the new chair
Sure.
of the Democratic Party. And I saw your campaign video, and in that video, you said that you were running for chair to unite the party and get the party back to its roots, that of the working class. What's your strategy to accomplish those goals?
Oh, well, to unite the party, I have been going, even during the campaign when I was running for chair, by the election time, I'd already been to 22 counties. There are 33 counties in New Mexico, as we know, and there are 6 counties that have no Democratic Party infrastructure. And I was really appalled by that, because New Mexico is a blue state. Why do we have counties that don't have a party? So that really pushed me that was one of the reasons I ran, and that was my platform. Right now, the 6 counties are Hidalgo County, Sierra County, DeBaca, Harding, Guadalupe, and Catron. We have almost got all of them now starting with a structure. That's very important. And for a state to remain blue, we need every county on board. So that's what I mean by uniting the party. Last night I was in Valencia County. After this interview, I'm hitting the road to Colfax County, up to Raton. And because I'm a union organizer, that's my background. The only thing asked of a union organizer is to listen. When we're recruiting members to the union or whatever we're organizing, we go to that person, we go to the people, and we don't talk. I'm not going up to Colfax County tonight and say, okay, this is what you're going to need to do. I'm going to go listen to what they need. And all counties have the same goal. They might have tiny differences, but our goal in the Democratic Party is to stay blue. And I'm going to go I listened to people last night in Valencia County all evening. And then you form a plan. How can I help? How can the party help in Valencia County? So that's what I'm doing to unite the party. And just showing up. I was in Little Torrance County a few weeks ago, and they were so happy to see someone from the party show up. And it's like, oh, all I have to do is show up. Well, not really. I'm showing up and I'm listening. And that's how I feel we're going to unite the party.
And going back to the point of getting the party back to its roots, did the Democratic Party lose its way?
I think so. I think it did. In this last election, I really do think it did. And I listened to a podcast several months ago it was with Stuart Applebaum, who happens to be the chair of the DNC Labor Caucus. Mm-hmm. And I just stepped down as the Labor Caucus of the Democratic Party of New Mexico. So my ears perked up to listen to him. And he said something that I think about every day. He said, the Democratic Party did not create the labor movement. The labor movement created the Democratic Party. And we've gotten away from that. And, we have to, I noticed that calling union members during the last election, they were voting against their best interests. So that's a challenge. It's a challenge I'm willing to take on and get our workers back to their party. The Democratic Party is the party of the working class.
Ms. Attleson, something else that you said in your campaign video caught my attention. You said that you had talked to county party leaders across the state and that they felt unheard, isolated, and neglected. I'm going to ask you a pretty pointed question. Did your predecessor, Jessica Velasquez, drop the ball?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
Jessica was a good leader. And when she decided not to run, I called her and said, I'm going to run. I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure.
Okay.
Got it. Yeah.
Well, Ms. Attleson, I want to switch over to some of the politics of New Mexico. In the most recent presidential election, President Donald Trump didn't win New Mexico, but he did make inroads in the state. Why do you think that happened? Why do you think that Kamala Harris lost ground in this most recent presidential election?
And it certainly is a fact. We did, and that's the reason, one of the reasons I decided to run. The day after the election, I looked at the map and I looked at Rio Arriba, who I've always said Rio Arriba is the bluest county in the entire world. Forget the state, it's bright blue. It lost 10 points. It's now purple. I think people believed the message that Donald Trump was giving, and they bought it. And Trump did lose by 6 points, so there is that. Still too close, but not happy with that. And we have to stay blue. And counties like Rio Arriba are concerning to me and should be concerning to all of Democrats in New Mexico. We need to get them back to a brighter blue, away from being purple.
Ms. Attleson, speaking of President Trump, give us your impressions of what's happening at the federal level under his administration.
I'm really, I'm disheartened. I'm concerned. I'm very concerned. All of the cuts are cuts to the working class, not to the billionaires. And, it's becoming, Trump's party is the party of the billionaires. Well, how many billionaires? What's the percentage of billionaires in this country? It's not huge. We are a country of working families and middle class. And I am so disappointed about the cuts, the recent budget. These are all things that affect the people in this country. So the billionaires can have a tax cut. That's just, I'm appalled, actually. And every day there's more and more cuts. There's more and more changes. It's not a kind administration.
Do you think that we'll see some backlash against Trump come the midterms, and that Democrats will benefit as a result?
I think we're already seeing that. I think, a few months or weeks ago, I don't know, time is, so it's all been since the race. The judge in Wisconsin, Judge Crawford, I thought, Elon Musk poured billions or at least millions of dollars into that race. And here was a Democrat judge that did not have the funding that her opponent did, and she won. That to me was very hopeful. And we're seeing, there are some special elections where things are very hopeful, where Dems are winning. So I really do think, I know this sounds very simplistic, but when I was in the teachers union and when we would recruit members, we always said the best recruiter to get members into our union was a bad principal. If we had a bad principal at a school, we got 100% membership. So I'm thinking with a bad president, we are going to get some folks to come back to their party. I do. I really do believe folks are having kind of buyer's remorse.
Ms. Attleson, as you know, the midterms are just right around the corner, it seems
Yes,
like. What do you think will be the biggest challenge for Democrats?
In the state, or
yes,
in the state, keeping CD district blue. We must reelect Gabe Vasquez. We need to send all of our delegation needs to be blue that we send to DC. I think that's going to be a challenge, absolutely. And we need to elect a Democratic governor. We absolutely must have a Democratic governor elected. And so those are the two challenges that I know. I wake up in the middle of the night and say, we've got to stay blue and we have to have a blue governor. So those right now, and it's any day now, the election, in election.
Well, all eyes will definitely be on the governor's race in the midterms, and a number of high-profile Democrats are already off and running. I don't know if you're willing to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of each of the candidates, or if you think any of them is the front runner.
I think all Democrats who run, in my view, are wonderful. I have no preferences. I just want Democrats elected.
So what will be the role of the Democratic Party of New Mexico in a primary when you have, X number of candidates all competing for that top spot?
We really don't, a primary, we don't get involved in. It's after the primary. And, I just remind people that I remember what it was like living under a Republican governor. I was an educator when Governor Susana Martinez took over and really, really tried her very best to dismantle public education. And we know what she did to the mental health profession. So I remind folks, it doesn't matter right now, just as long as we have a Democratic governor win. We don't want a Republican governor. It wasn't that long ago. I still have battle scars.
We have a number of Republicans that are have already announced or are considering. Are you worried?
No, I am focused. My passion is to keep New Mexico blue. We have a leadership team at DPNM, and our goal, we have one goal, to keep New Mexico as bright a shade of blue as we can. So no, I'm not worried. We have energized Dems all over the state. So I am really not as worried as one would think.
It sounds based on our conversation that you are already off and running, but I wanted to ask you, if you had a superpower, what would it be?
Oh gosh, to be able to get to all of these counties in less time than it takes me, faster travel, I don't know. Just my superpower, I don't know. I really don't.
Maybe the Democratic Party of New Mexico can invest in a helicopter?
That would be fun, except I'm terrified of heights, so that wouldn't be great. But
Ms. Attleson, as we discussed earlier, you served as a librarian for 45 years. What's your favorite book and why?
Oh gosh. There are so many. And funny you should bring that up. This morning, I couldn't find a postage stamp that I had laid down. And I thought back to my favorite book in elementary school, and one I always loved sharing when I was in elementary, The Borrowers, because it's like, oh, the Borrows took that stamp, or, when I can't find that sock when I'm matching my laundry, it's like, the Borrowers are at it again. So I thought about that today. That's just currently on my mind. And I thought, oh, I loved that book as a child, and I loved recommending it to children. And so right now, today, that's my favorite book. It could change by the evening.
Right on. Well, I got to tell you that I'm a little bit biased because librarians are some of my favorite people in the world. They've instilled in me this passion for books and for reading. May I ask you, what's the biggest misconception about librarians?
Gosh. Oh, that we sit around all day and say, shh, we shush folks. I never did that. And, I know I got my master's in library science, and people said, you have to go to graduate school to be a librarian just to stamp out books. And it's like, yeah, we do more than that. We select books for our community. It's an art. We know how to reach out to the public. We know how to match individual to a book. It's much more than that. And so I always found it exciting, or I wouldn't have stayed for all those years. And I think just that we're boring and we shush people. And I don't think I'm as boring as people think librarians are. So.
All right. Well, Miss Attleson, it's been so much fun speaking with you and spending time with you. Am I missing to ask you anything you'd like to add or tell the voters of New Mexico?
Daniel, thank you. I would really like to do a huge shout out to the new vice chair, Cam Crawford. He is a union firefighter. So we have 2 union members who are leading the Democratic Party of New Mexico, which I think will help bring our party back to the working class. Cam Crawford is incredible. He's 23 years old. We have plans on how to bring young people back to the party, to engage young people. I am so excited about working with this very, very energetic and charismatic leader. So I do want to do a huge shout out to our vice chair, Cam Crawford.
All right. Well, Miss Attleson, thank you so much. And on that topic, a shout out to my colleagues, Margaret O'Hara and Nicholas Gilmore, for filling in for me while I was away. And again, thank you so much, Miss Attleson, for joining this podcast, and for our listeners and watchers for tuning into Around the Roundhouse. Join us every week as we talk to newsmakers in the political realm by subscribing to our podcast through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. For the latest developments, follow our coverage online at SantaFeNewMexican.com, where you can also subscribe to our political newsletter, The Roundhouse Report. Until next time, I'm Daniel Chacón, and this has been Around the Roundhouse.